KCAT 97.1 FM.
Good morning, KCAT Nation. Ben and PTine, Quarantine Diaries, week 4, 30 days worth of quarantine now. Starting to wonder if we'll ever go back outside. Ben here in Victoria, Peter there in Houston. Peter, happy quarantine to you.
Happy quarantine, Ben.
Ben and PTine, the Quarantine Diaries is brought to you by pepperoni sticks. Kind. Any particular brand will work just fine. And Peter, so this quarantine, I think, as we've chronicled here, has been especially hard on me because it really has been disruptive to my life, right? And everyone's probably saying, "Well, Ben, that's all of us." But I had this really good system going, right? I would ride in the morning, so a little bit of cardio. There was a gym. They call it a gym, and that was very attractive to me before I came to the company. What it really is it's sort of a dungeon, right? There's a little room in the basement with a couple of free weights, a few machines, and then like an old guy kind of tooling around doing sit-ups. But anyway, so that was part of the routine, right? Bike to work, do a little lifting in the gym, and I was really living this physically fit life, which is good because work also provides complimentary snacks, which I was taking advantage of as much as I could. So I knew when I was going into this more sedentary life that I'm living now that I had to cut way back on the calories because even with my constant snacking at work, I've kind of gone in the wrong direction weight wise, but not in sort of fool myself into thinking nothing's changed. So, but when you don't do the biking and the lifting anymore, you can't really live in that lie anymore, right? So I was forced to say, okay, I have to cut back on calories. And so I mentioned before the Stir water enhancer that I use. Walmart is now out of that, so that's a problem. So I've discovered in the interim pepperoni sticks. Nice, healthy snack, right? I don't know, healthy, really salty, but a little snack that I can just grab all throughout the day. It's less than the handfuls of trail mix and granola bars that I was eating at work. So that's why they become a sponsor. Same deal we have a Stir. If you go to Walmart and pay them, in this case, $15, they'll let you have some. Anyway, being a snack and having a snack kind of reminded me of something that happened to me this week. So Pippa, there she is, dressed up for her Halloween as an octopus. Kind of a hard dog to photograph. In addition to pepperoni sticks, one thing that I've started doing is I go on a walk of the dogs each day, right? So we put Jimmy in the stroller. I am responsible for handling both the small dogs, and we walk around the block. It's pretty much the only sort of athletic activity I have. And the other day, we were walking, and speaking of snacks, Pippa, about 7 pounds, little chihuahua, really not a threat to anybody. We were walking along, and out of nowhere comes this. This is exactly what it looked like to me in the moment, right? This fearsome wolf-like creature. Now, chihuahuas, not knowing any better, of course, go into yip mode and are lunging at this thing and barking and barking and barking. And so I try to pick them up by their leash. And the dog, or the wolf in this case, is running all around and trying to snap at them and like that. So in the process of trying to get the dogs up to my arms, where then I don't really know what my plan was. I think my plan was to maybe try to kick the fearsome wolf off. Anyway, before I even got there, Pippa slipped out of her harness, and now it was Pippa versus this fearsome creature. What a scene! My wife is screaming. Pippa is heading off back up the street towards our house, and this dog in hot pursuit, and then me trying to run after them with the other dog. Now, about halfway up the street, the fearsome timber wolf runs into some other people walking down. They kind of stop it, and then Pippa keeps on going, so she fades out of view, and I'm street after the whole thing, far, far behind the pack. Now, the timber wolf starts heading back down towards me, and I start to realize at that point that I still have the other dog, right? So I'm once again in conflict. Now I was able to fend off the timber wolf and then find Pippa cowering in front of our door. So really terrifying experience. But then what I started to learn here is that it may not have been the experience that I thought it was, because in my mind, fearsome timber wolf, some owner who is an adult and has trained this thing to kill. What it wound up being like was more like this. So apparently, the people that I yelled at, "Control your effing dog," was actually like a 9-year-old kid and a little dog. Well, not little. I mean, it was a big dog. I will say I feel bad for swearing at a child. And also, now I'm very concerned that every time I walk past that complex, there's got to be some dad out there wanting to have a word with me for screaming obscenities at his children. So I'm a little concerned about that. And then to make matters worse, when my wife finally caught up to me, because she still had the baby, right? I went off to save the dog and I figured she could stay with the baby and protect him. When she got back up to me, she was like, "You probably shouldn't swear at those children. And also, why were you so far behind the situation?" So just criticism all the way around and pretty much a disaster. The only thing that was missing was some portly gentleman with which to fight. But I think I'm going to run into him at some point when he comes out with his kids, and they're like, "Daddy, that's the man." So that's my quarantine week. How's your week gone?
So I had a situation where a lot of role reversal compared to your dog story. So I was walking around the block. This was in the evening. So normally I try to walk with the kids as well, and I'll usually strap the baby on my back and add to my own cardio, and then just walk with the two ones and holding their hands. This one evening, the guy who lives, I mean, I was walking on one side of the street, and all the way across the other side of the street, there were two, I think, Chihuahuas, because they were tiny, but they came after me. Like, they ran all the way across. It was just beyond what you'd expect from a guard dog, because they ran all the way across the street, which is clearly no longer their territory. And then so I just started. I was by myself, so I just started like walking faster. They actually came up and bit me on the back of the Chihuahuas. So now every time we walk around the block, my plans are to pick up my two small children, and then in the light of day, I wouldn't have any problem defeating the Chihuahuas.
But did you run into the owners? Was there any obscenities exchanged or?
No, they weren't outside. I don't know. They just left their Chihuahuas to roam around the neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, the dogs are punchy lately. I think that what's happening is they realize that we are in a vulnerable state now, right? So years and years of complacency and accepting us as masters, I think the inner wolf is starting to peek out a little bit. We're kind of the wounded animal now. Everyone's sick and pandemic-y, and they're starting to reassert their control. So I think that the Chihuahuas, next thing you know, they might be actually like, when you come back to your house, driving your car.
So the moral though is you should just let Pippa have at it.
Yeah, I think if Pippa had at it, we'd end up with more of a this kind of situation where Pippa becomes that healthy snack. Now, I was thinking about your tree and thinking about my Harry Potter marathon from a week ago, and really this week missing it a lot. Started watching this dubbed over Spanish show that Primo recommended, which isn't bad, but I found myself again wanting Harry Potter back, and then thinking again last week we did 5 Tool TACers. I really wonder what houses different TACers would be sorted into. So we have brought our own sorting hat, Gabe Mamola, here to help us sort out some of these TACers. So what we're going to do is we're going to toss out names and make cases. These are the 4 houses of Hogwarts and the different qualities that they possess. We're going to toss out some names, and ultimately Gabe's going to decide where they should be sorted. So Gabe, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining.
I do want to say I have some issue with the descriptions of the houses you've given, because there's Rowling's idea of what the houses should have been, and then there's how the houses actually play out in the books, and those are totally different things. So we'll have to discuss whether we should go with the idealized houses, or in actuality, Slytherin is just an evil house. So, evil TACers will go there.
All right.
The question is, how does the sorting hat, does the sorting hat know this?
In the books, I think so.
Does the sorting hat sort according to an idealized appearance or according to its prediction of future action?
It's awfully chatty. That's all I really remember.
Right.
It talks a lot.
Right.
And I think there is some touch on potential. But I mean, what I've learned from the books and also from the movie is that really great power is given to the sorting hat. So your criticism is well taken, and we will give great deference to the sorting hat's opinion. So use the power wisely. But what I will do is when I throw things out, I will encourage debate. So Peter, if you have difficulty with what I'm saying, feel free to challenge me. So my first guy that I was considering is Paul Shields, guy from my class, prefect, known for running out in tidy whities, right? That was kind of his signature thing. When you talk about, when you want to be remembered, the memory that people have of you. So for me, I'm fortunate, right? People are like, oh yeah, you were drunk and angry, right? Which that's not great, but it's not you. Yeah, yeah, you used to come out in your underpants like tidy whities. That's not a good rap. So I feel bad for him a little bit. When we went to my reunion, my wife said he was good looking, so he's not doing that bad. I guess that hurt me a little bit. But Paul Shields. So remembering back to Paul, very loyal to his friends, right? Him and Kyle, they had a little bit of a cabal going there. Roommates for a couple years. Both became prefects. So kind of a loyalty thing there with some rewards. Daring and brave. He did marry a Coglin. That is pretty daring and brave. Cunning and ambitious. I don't know about that. He did catch Primo several times sneaking out the exit, but there was an alarm that went off, right? So I don't know if that would require a lot of cunning. And then as far as wisdom, he was very well versed in the teachings of Aristotle. But I think the defining things of Paul being the underpants, which might fall into daring and brave, and the undying loyalty to Kyle Washit. So I would submit Paul Shields as a Hufflepuff.
I tend to think of the houses as almost more equivalent to high school cliques, or they make more sense if you do that. So that Gryffindor is essentially jocks, Raven essentially nerds, Slytherin is essentially rich kids, and Hufflepuff is just your run of the mill folks, and or possibly student government. Even as Ben was describing him, I was already going to put him in Hufflepuff. But again, I have to question these epithets of daring and brave for Gryffindor, cunning and ambitious for Slytherin, wise for Ravenclaw. What is it? Loyal and fair for Hufflepuff. Those aren't really kept to in. I mean, Hufflepuff. I mean, if you get put in Hufflepuff, you lose. Like you've lost the wizarding life game, essentially.
Why is it? I mean, like I completely agree. And I don't really know why. It seems like it's so embarrassing to be in Hufflepuff. Maybe it's
and that's what I mean is because basically she defined the houses, but then didn't actually put characters in those houses according to how she defined it. She just put everybody she was interested in Gryffindor. Put all the bad guys in Slytherin.
It would have been miserable and boring if, like, literally people were sorted into houses that were like entirely with similar strengths and weaknesses.
I think it's when you look at these insignias, I think it's the fact that like the Hufflepuff mascot looks like he's about ready to break into your trash can and is like really nervous about it.
Yeah.
I just got images of like weak and timid and a lot of things that I think the Sorting Hat said it perfectly, that if you get sorted into Hufflepuff, you've already lost the wizard life. You may as well be done. Like
yeah, because I mean, it would make
you
would focus on rules and following the law in that case, because what else would you have?
Peter, who do you have to be submitted to the Sorting Hat?
Sam Almeida. So Sam, obviously a member of a somewhat long-lived TAC family, and noted for his exploits on soccer field, his no nonsense taken or given in class, his somewhat brusque character. I would put him in Gryffindor personally.
That is absolutely wrong.
Yeah, let me offer some objections. So the line of mental that have been left in Sam's wake, from siblings to parents to random commoners in the street. If there's ever been a Slytherin in the world, it would be Sam Almeida.
Sam is definitely a Slytherin.
Talk about an opposite ends of the spectrum, right? So last week, Sam's wife being one of the only 5-tool TAC students, and now Sam being quickly sorted into Slytherin with a path of pain and destruction in his wake. So, all right. I submit another name to you. One, Paul McCown. I only knew him as a freshman, but I followed his career with some interest because he's done a lot of neat things. Was a councilman back home, was a CFO going all around the country with a startup. now he's kind of set up the CFO life of being the CFO of Wyoming Catholic College and living in Lander, and he rides around on horses now. And I think he started a distillery, which I'm interested to learn more about. Daring and brave, right? Being the CFO of a startup, being a council, pretty interesting. But if politics, isn't that you sort of lie professionally, right? And so to me, what was very strange is shortly after the previous, or after the election where he wound up losing, it was close, but he wound up losing, he immediately moved, right? And so I was thinking that probably part of a big part of his pitch was he was, a Michigan guy, right? He was from that city, he grew up and so on. I think he was pitching that to the voters only to peace out the second they took him out of office, which is very Slytherin. And then second point, as part of his CFO adventures with his startup company, he posted that he would go to Thailand fairly often, which I hear that in Thailand you can pay to watch a Komodo dragon eat a man, which I'm certain that Paul did, on top of many other terrible things that you can do there. So I think that Paul McCown, despite what you might initially think, is very much a Slytherin.
I'm going to put him in Gryffindor.
Ooh.
Gryffindor. I think your initial characterization of embarking on the startup, running for office, all those things strike me as very Gryffindor traits. I can't speak to what does or doesn't go on in Thailand.
You can pay a man to eat a Komodo dragon. No, you can pay a Komodo dragon to eat a man. It's the reverse.
Honestly, it's probably either. Maybe even at the same time. The man is eating the Komodo dragon while the Komodo dragon is eating him.
It really sounds like it's worth the money, right? That sounds amazing.
Yeah, so I didn't hear enough Slytherin, because again, those were sort of secondary things. What you went to were first the Gryffindor.
Okay, well, Sorting Hat makes the final decision, so I will submit to the wisdom. Paula Grimm. Okay, this is a tough one because she represented the man, right? Which is a very Slytherin thing to do based on the Sorting Hat's prelayed conditions about what a Slytherin is. Daring and brave, I don't know about that. Really good volleyball serve. That's kind of intimidating. Kind of a brave serve. Loyal and fair. Wise. I don't know. I never was in class with her. I feel like I feel like Paula, by virtue of being part of a large TAC family, there's a certain loyalty to that. Daring and brave. She did dominate volleyball, and I think reject some really great options that were pursuing her. So I kind of feel like I'm torn between Hufflepuff and Gryffindor, but I'm going to lean with the athletic excellence and the boldness to turn down many suitors.
The aspect of, so to some degree, anytime that someone comes of a part of like TAC royalty or something like that family where they're given this privilege, that screams Slytherin. The question is just how do they use that, right?
She does have that kind of Malfoy-colored hair.
If they leverage what they're given to get ahead, whether that's socially or academically or financially, then that's purely a Slytherin style of acting. So the question is, do we think Paula did that? And I would say maybe some of the time, but probably rejected that enough to land in Gryffindor.
I don't know. That's a pretty compelling case for Slytherin. You may have swung me, but what does the sorting?
So I don't think this particular case can be answered in terms of Rowling's differentiation. You have to answer this one by going back to the houses as high school cliques, and there Gryffindor become jocks, and Paula Grimm was a jock if there ever was one. So Gryffindor. But on that metric, rather than the daring and brave, wise / whatever metric.
The next person that I'll submit to the hat, one Josh Kens. So Josh Kens, wow, really embodies a lot of the qualities you'd see in these houses, right? Daring and brave, obviously a guy who overcame a lot to get where he was. A lot of physical problems. It seems like his family wasn't super supportive of his academic endeavors. Always had a really tight group of friends. Seemed to really like him. So loyal and fair, like the Hufflepuff. Really, really wise, right? You could talk to him about it, make you feel stupid. But defining feature of Josh Kins is he could converse in Latin. To me, is basically the TAC equivalent of parcel tongue, which is a strict Slytherin quality. And let me tell you, so I speak on this from authority because my father is a Latin teacher. In fact, obviously very committed to the language. And I remember as a kid asking him to speak to me in Latin and him refusing to do so because he would say, quote unquote, it's a dead language. So despite embodying many of the qualities of the four houses, his parcel tongue is a clear. So I would request he be put into Slytherin.
Doesn't Harry Potter speak parcel tongue at some point? Yeah. So it's not really, it's not actually unique to Slytherin. And so Josh really strikes me as someone who would, learn the secrets of others even without being one of their house. So I submit that that Ravenclaw in particular would be able to learn the secrets of another house.
Now, again, every time I know a counter argument to these things, I feel so much more ashamed of myself. I'm starting to realize that despite attempting to be a cool person, I somehow or another have a lot of Harry Potter knowledge. So I really do think I'm going to buy that scarf that you suggested I buy last week, Peter. You may recall that the Sorting Hat had great difficulty on to whether to put Harry in Gryffindor or Slytherin. So I would argue that he was a Slytherin masquerading in Gryffindor. So I don't know. We'll submit to the hat for the final judgment. Josh Kins, where's he go?
In every single classroom interaction with Josh Kins, I found him to be a very intelligent but very frustrating person to converse with. In every interaction outside of class I had with Josh Kins, I found him to be an incredibly balanced, nuanced, and deep thinker. For that reason, he's going Ravenclaw.
Oh, Ravenclaw.
Uh-huh.
He might have wanted to kill Mr. Shields. I probably should have led with that story. Wasn't persuasive enough, but I really think he wanted to kill Mr. Shields. Oh well.
I mean, who at TAC didn't want to kill Mr. Shields at some point?
Me. I was Team Shields when no one else was Team Shields. And oddly enough, because I think other than Mrs. Shields, been the one person on Team Shields. Because when I went back home to Ohio, his daughter, I guess, was going to Franciscan, the youngest one, who I guess wasn't good enough for TAC. but anyway, so I ran into her, right? And I was all drunk, and she didn't know who it was. And I was like, oh, you're a Shields? Because they all look the same. She's like, yeah. And I was like, I love your dad. And she looked at me like I had, like, two heads. Like, the thought that anyone could come and just, like, stand for Mr. Shields was beyond comprehension for her. So, yeah, maybe I'm the only person that didn't hate Mr. Shields.
So this is a tricky one. He himself is a man of mystery, but he showed up our freshman year. Father Buckley. Start from the bottom left. He was, I think, just a very cunning man. Very, very capable Jesuit. Really understood the nuances of the different people he was talking to, and he was able to say things that were really clearly wise, very learned. He had read much, written much. Obviously, he's loyal because he took lifelong vows. I think he's a Slytherin.
All right. Well, so this again, like I said, one of the harder ones to place. So certainly very wise, right? A very learned guy. The Jesuits hate him, so I don't know if he's loyal because his own order wanted to kick him out. Now that's probably a badge of honor, right? So maybe it's not great to be loyal to the Jesuits. But he was daring and brave enough to go against his order and then be exiled to TAC. And he was cunning enough to start English Mass, which was incredibly popular, but sort of, kind of against the spirit of the place. It's a very Slytherin move. But ultimately, I feel like his wisdom outweighs his cunning. I would put him in Ravenclaw.
I have two thoughts. Can I still give thoughts?
Yeah.
I have two thoughts on the Father Buckley thing. And so our categories here say cunning and ambitious for Slytherin and daring and brave for Gryffindor, and they're related. And first, Father Buckley, well, they're related, so I'll give them both. Father Buckley wrote a book about his own order called When Jesuits Were Giants, implying that Jesuits are now not giants, and published it, which goes A, towards daring and brave, burning bridges down in his own order, and B, completely destroys any ambition he might have had within his order. So I'm going with Gryffindor.
Yeah, but it's just so nasty. Like, it's just like nobody but a Slytherin would title their book that.
That's fair. I've always enjoyed the heck out of that book title.
Yeah, I'm torn. My first inclination is Slytherin. My second inclination is actually more towards Gryffindor. He seems to me like a Slytherin masquerading as a Gryffindor, which, if that can be a category for Harry, then I think it can be a category for Father Buckley. So whatever it is that Harry is, a Slytherin pretending to be a Gryffindor, or a Gryffindor with Slytherin traits, that's what I'm going to go with.
Yeah, because Father Buckley is nothing if not a protagonist.
Let's stop sorting people and let's start sorting cash. Right? So what's happened recently? We have received a stimulus, and what we're going to do today in this week's version of Beat Pete, 2 people enter, 1 leaves. Peter, 0-2 in the game, 0-3 maybe. And joining us, a often maligned person back when we did the morning show, but he has forgotten about the terrible things we said about him and been willing to come on and join us, Mr. Timothy Cantu Esquire. Welcome aboard, Tim.
Guys, and for the record, I was actually thinking about it today, and I absolutely have not forgotten.
I love it. This bodes well. So with the hints, you guys will probably be trying to guess what would I buy with the stimulus money. And so the hints are actually good in this case. So I'm probably not going to get any. So my answer might be none. I do like to go to Walmart, and I've become obsessed with safety equipment. So naturally, I would be just a gigantic vat of sanitizer. And it was pointed out to me that there is some for $250, which, I don't want to spend that kind of money normally, but if it's stimulus money, it feels like it's money. Of course, I would buy that. But anyway, that's the spirit of the game. That was a freebie. But what we're going to do is you're going to guess, and I will award closest to the pin. Max points are 10, US points are 1, and whoever has the most at the end of 7 is the winner. So Tim and Peter, are you ready to play Beat Pete? All right.
Let's do it.
Let's get started. All right. My favorite couple from my freshman year, Smeck, as I call them, Katie Smiley and Zach Meckley. They are small business owners. Katie Meckley, photographer, beautiful blue photos. I think she took the Sorting Hats wedding photos or engagement photos. So good work. They're pillars of the UD community, very community oriented. And also, I once had dinner with Zach's grandpa. So there you go. These are the hints. Peter, you go first. What do you think they're going to spend their stimulus money on?
They're going to purchase that really nice picnic table that they've been eyeing for a while, but that costs like $1,000 because it's handmade by someone.
It sounds like really intimate knowledge of what they want to do with the stimulus money.
They're going to do 2 things. Katie is going to do the responsible thing, use it on some photography equipment, maybe an updated computer or a copy of Photoshop. Zach, and I can speak from personal experience, having seen him in the not too distant past, is going to spend some of it on an absolutely obscene quantity of reasonably good but not terribly expensive bourbon that he can share with his friends.
All right. So you guys are both fairly close to the pin. And I quote, "We're going to spend it on local restaurants, especially ones that have margaritas." That was the answer. And 2 really good answers. So we have a picnic table, which certainly has to do with eating. We have alcohol, which is similar to margaritas. So I'm going to go with 5 points for each. That's my recommendation. We'll flip it to the Sorting Hat for the final determination.
I would lean more towards the bourbon answer, since alcohol was explicitly mentioned, though.
All right. So 4 points for Peter, 6 for Tim.
That sounds right.
All right. Tim takes the lead. Peter's looking towards 0-4. Raph and Sarah. Raph is a former prosecutor in Kern County. I County Crusher. Never liked that, but I think it stuck. The Kern County Crusher, Raph sent many people to a paddy wagon. When I was in California a few months ago, they refused to visit with me, claiming that Sarah wasn't feeling well, unconfirmed. You can't find a family picture of them because Raph told me the last time they tried to do it, a kid almost fell down a hill. What are Raph and Sarah spending their stim money on?
I don't know Sarah, but I know Raph, and they're going to spend it on what Raph will hate, which is one of those kid backpacks with a leash, so when they take family photos, no one falls down a hill.
They're gonna spend it on backyard landscaping so that they have a really nice garden in the backyard where they can take family pictures.
Where no hills are around. They're going to spend it on a 15-passenger van. They have a lot of kids. So I think actually, so Tim is going to get points here because he mentioned something that had to do with a kid. So that's more moving towards kind of transporting a kid. This in case it was a little leash that kept them close to you. Although Peter's idea of a family portrait is something that you would include the whole family in, much like a 15-passenger van. So I'm a little torn here. I think this might be a 2 points each, but Sorting Hat, what say you?
That sounds fair.
All right, 2 points each. So it's tight round after 2. Peter with 6 points, Tim with 8. Moving on to the swamp monster himself, Billy Gribben. Billy Gribben, what he wants to do with his money, LBJ and Nixon would be absolutely appalled. They would not approve of it. Billy is a swamp monster, being in D.C., and apparently his job of being the voice of Lion Ted, writing speeches for Ted Cruz, just wasn't spicy enough for him, so he moved on to something even spicier. What is Billy going to spend the money on?
He's going to record and self-publish a album.
An album about
An album.
space? What kind of? You have to give us a particular genre.
Of his favorite raunchy songs.
Oh, it is spicy. Okay.
He's going to spend it on the black market buying every hot sauce that he can find that appeared on the YouTube sensation Hot Ones.
Wow.
That's really good.
Those are really good guesses. Not anywhere close to the actual answer, but I kind of like the guesses better than the answer. Now, this I'm not totally sure about because when I asked him, the conversation ended sort of abruptly, but I believe what he said in the text was he was going to contribute to the local faux economy. And I wonder if it was an autocorrect that was supposed to be for the food economy, but I'm going to go ahead and accept it as the formal Vietnamese pho dish. It's very spicy. Doesn't really have hot sauce in it, but hot sauce is spicy. It doesn't really have anything to do with raunchy songs, although I think you can buy like women in Vietnamese or Vietnam, which is sort of raunchy. I think I'm going to award you each point. So, what say you?
I mean, eating pho necessarily involves hot sauce, but it doesn't have to be hot. You put that in optionally.
Well, I think I've exposed myself as knowing nothing about this because I say pho, it's pho. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, that's right.
Let me edit this out to make myself sound good. So, but you put hot sauce in it. That's a thing?
You do put hot sauce in it, so that does lend some weight to Tim's answer.
Oh yeah, no wonder people were looking at me last time I went to the restaurant. You turn down the hot sauce, they think you're like a jerk. Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna give Tim 3 points then, because you were at least sort of in the right area. All right. So after 3 rounds, Peter 7, Tim 11. Your answer was more exciting. I'll give you that. Although Tim's was sort of exciting in a specific kind of way. Primo and Bridget. Primo is known to go for it on 4th down. As a nurse, Bridget is used to high pressure situations, and her favorite color is red. What are Primo and Bridget going to spend it on?
Oh boy, this is tough. Favorite color is red, high pressure situations. David is going to buy a full Toreador costume complete with a red cape.
Oh, wow. You should suggest that he might actually do that, I think. I think he could talk him into that.
Do it if we mention it.
Man, these clues are terrible.
This one's actually like the best clue. I think when you see the answer, you're going to apologize.
Oh my gosh. How many kids do they have right now?
4.
Okay. So I'm going to say that they plan on having another child and using the stimulus money to pay for all the medical bills.
You went from an exciting answer to a sort of boring answer. The answers are going to go to Las Vegas.
Oh.
Wow. So this
I could have
one
told you that.
Yeah. I mean, so again, I get a lot of heat for these clues, but I think it was now that you know the answer, those are not bad clues, right? Kind of going for it, gambling, high pressure, you're gambling, favorite color red, put it all on red.
Where does the red come in?
Put it all
It's
on
not
red,
black.
red. Yeah.
Roulette. Okay. Yeah. Roulette cards. Yeah. Fair enough.
Big gambling crowd here. All right, so these are, again, we'll have to kind of parse the answers. Matador costume. Feel like I've seen one of those in Vegas. So I'm leaning some points there. Injuries for kids. I mean, people do get hurt in Vegas. Sunburnt, VDs. There's all sorts of things that could happen. I think I'm going to award you each 1 point. Sorry, Nat, what say you?
Yeah, I mean the Toreador costume is interesting because the last time I visited Primo, I was driving out with Nat and we stayed for a night, and Primo for about 3 hours showed us all his favorite WWE wrestling clips and videos. And I feel like a Toreador costume kind of goes in line with, sort of wrestling costumes and all that. So I was persuaded by Tim's answer, but I don't know that either answer is better than the other. So I'm fine with giving them both the same amount of points.
3 rounds to go. Tim is, I mean, the way this game's been going, this might be an insurmountable lead. Tim up 12-8, but Peter, there's always a chance for you to rally with one Annie Hellerman, who has apparently the bluest eyes I've ever seen. I never realized this until today. I may have tried to Photoshop them onto my picture. I'm not going to admit to that because that's a little creepy. But anyway, what we know about Annie, math genius. She was a former Orioles bat girl, and they probably could have used some of her sabermetric knowledge. And the recent quarantine has exposed the need for this purchase. What will Annie Hellerman be purchasing with the Stim money?
Math, baseball, math. Quarantine.
Baseball, math, baseball.
Yeah. I'm gonna say that she intends to purchase some computing time from one of the supercomputers that have time for sale, in order to crunch some relevant data.
It's like Sling Blade trying to explain relevant data.
Relevant data for the possible return of baseball in this calendar year.
Wow. Okay. So that was not a bad answer, though.
Okay, so I really hope she's listening, because if not, this will be a little bit lost. But she is going to buy a membership to fangraphs.com so that she can do a lot of research completely free of ads to figure out all the ways in which the Orioles never, ever, ever should have given Chris Davis that horrible, horrible $150 million contract.
So inside baseball. I think she was more in the Brady Anderson era. You guys are actually both really close. She's going to buy a new laptop.
Come on, I said she'd buy a computer.
You said math, baseball, math, buying time from a supercomputer to crunch relevant about when baseball is going to return. There were a lot of computer things involved in your answer. Tim's answer was more web-based. It was more about ad blockers, which you can't really utilize unless you're on a computer. I guess you could utilize it if you're on a phone or a tablet. So I think I'm going to award Peter 7 points here, but I'm going to give Tim 4. Sorting Hat, what say you?
I agree completely.
Okay. So we have a really close game coming into the final few, which I will admit are probably going to be some of the most challenging for you guys because there are people that you do not know at all. But Tim is right up 16-15. Moving on to Donnie Turrentine and his wife, Emma. They live in a rural outpost in Washington State. Donnie is a computer genius, and he told me that his wife liked 0 of the things that he wanted to buy. Now, there are 3 things here, so you can receive triple points if you get all 3.
All right. See, I've met them, and like recently, I don't remember the number of months because time has ceased to have meaning, but I met them not that long ago, and so I feel like I should have more insight, and yet I don't at all, other than following Emma on Instagram. So I'm going to go with Chicks for the Farm. We got 3 things here.
Okay, new Chicks for the Farm.
Donnie is going to buy, I'm going to go real general and probably forfeit some points. Computer components, as in components for building your own computer.
That's a smart play. I like that.
For the kicker, new tires for the Suburban.
Oh, okay. These are solid guesses. All right, Peter, Tim and Tim, you may feel that this is not a fair question, and you will feel completely vindicated on the next one. So don't worry. You may feel mistreated now, but you're going to feel good in a second. Peter, what say you?
Well, wait, give me a second. He's got to read text first.
Well, he replied to my message like 10 minutes before the show started, so I don't like your chances.
No, he won't reply to me. Let me think. Okay. This ought to be. I mean, I ought to have a leg up, but man. Okay, 3 things. And Emma doesn't like any of them. What are you saying?
He replied.
Oh, that's not helpful.
You're going to want the extra help, and then we see the next person.
He just said that he gave him the whole list. You picked 3.
You can't blatantly cheat like this. This is not baseball.
I think he's she doesn't like he's gonna buy a sniper rifle or a more militarily inclined gun and not like a woodsman kind of gun. So that's one thing. He's gonna buy more computer equipment that Emma thinks is redundant, and she's probably right. So that could be probably like networking stuff, where he doesn't need that. And then let's see, he's gonna buy a still. That makes sense. He's gonna buy a still.
Okay. Well, you may or may not
Emma
have been.
would like it if you bought it.
You were just reading that off of a text. Wow. Okay. So Tim is probably feeling very mistreated now. Absolutely, he's going to buy a still. So that is one of them. He was going to buy networking equipment for what he called his off-grid shop, which sounded like something that, like, if you stumbled across, it'd have to kill you. And then a car hauler to haul dead cars to his property. So, really solid guesses. Peter was really close to the pin on several of them. So, Peter, I'm going to award you 9 points. Tim, you gave a pretty worthy answer with general components, so I'll give you 3. Which puts you at a little bit of a disadvantage going into the final round because now the score is 23-19. But I think you're going to love coming back because the final contestant is Cantu, Tim's wife.
Oh, this is terrible. Terrible news.
It's going to be bad. A very talented landscape photographer, very aggressive on Twitter. I will say, so I follow Marie and have for a while, and she's constantly attacking people and companies. And so I was a little intimidated when I tried to message her on Twitter about giving me what she would want because I was afraid she was going to attack me. And she said that Tim would be in big trouble if he doesn't get this right. So I believe, Peter, you go first, and then Tim will finish it off.
Twitter aggressive. She's going to buy a really big bird feeder that will get all the birds to come to the yard.
And Tim, what say you? A lot of pressure.
None whatsoever. Unless she's really just given a surprise twist to really throw me. She is going to spend it on, despite the fact that the Corona stimulus package is capped at $1,200 per adult and $500 per child, she is going to throw a real curveball by spending approximately $25,000 on plants, flowers, and herbs for the yard.
I think, unfortunately, Peter, you rely too much on my clues, which are horrible. The answer was plants, absolutely. And here is a corpse flower. I was hoping maybe she bought that. It's the most expensive plant you can buy. That's a 10-pointer. 10 points for Tim, taking him to 29. A worthy answer from Peter with a bird feeder, which is often surrounded by plants and birds. So I'll give you 4 points, which take you to 28, which means the final score is Tim 29, Peter 28. Congratulations, Tim. You have one beat Pete.
Honestly, the biggest achievement of my day. And if it's worth a bonus point, thanks to Marie, I already know way too much about the corpse flower.
Oh, really?
We do not have one, but I do know a decent amount about it. More than I ever thought I would.
Well, Peter, how you feeling? That was rough.
That was rough. Am I 0-3 now?
I mean, yeah, I think the only tic-tac-toe first no one listened to outside of the people that I advertised for alumni of St. Thomas Aquinas College in New York. This week's advertising campaign was scuttled because I spent the money on sound effects because I learned last week when editing how to add sound effects in. So I think that'll liven things up. And this week I will target corpse flower enthusiasts if that is a category. because we get some more of the gardening types in to listen to the show. But unfortunately, we've come to the end of another show. I tell you what, not to oversell it, but for next week's show, I have the best idea that we've ever done, right? I got it today, and it was so good I almost wanted to change the entire show script. So this show has been fun. Thank you, Gabe, as the sorting hat. Thank you, Tim, for your domination of Beat Pete. We hope that you tune in next week for, like I said, the most exciting game we've ever played on this show. All the people out there in KCAT land.
48.